Hello, people, and welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I am Sherrod Blakely, joined today by my good friend who's got a little background music going there that we did not anticipate. Uh, Michael Curtis of the Dallas Mavericks. How you doing, Mike?
Doing good, man. How's it going?
Good, good. Now, where you at? Where you at right now?
I'm in Dallas. I'm in my community, my apartment's community room, like the conference room.
Gotcha.
So I don't hear any music. Were you talking about the ding that just came through?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a text message. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, you know what? Being a beat writer, I should know that. Considering that's kind of what we do. We're literally always on call, no matter what you're doing, even if it's guest appearance on the Big Three NBA podcast. People still want to reach out to you. Before we get started, though, I want to make sure that when you're not listening to this episode of the Big Three NBA podcast, which is part of the CLNS Media Network family, you're showing some love to our good friends at Prize Picks, which is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download the app today and get a $50 bonus after your first $5 lineup. Also, another great partner of the program is Game Time, which takes the guesswork out of getting great prices to your favorite sporting events or concerts. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We are going to jump right into it, my friend, and talk about your team, the Dallas Mavericks. Well, I'm looking at this roster and I'm looking at the Western Conference, and I got to be honest with you, man. It feels like a crapshoot trying to figure out what the Mavericks are going to do. I can easily see them being one of the last teams standing and getting back to the finals. Definitely. But I can also see them not even making the playoffs and maybe struggle to get into the play-in game if certain things go a certain way. I'm just curious, Mike, from your perspective, because you're around this team on a day in, day out basis. What are some of the things that you think have to break their way in order for them to break through and get back to the NBA Finals, which, again, they were just a couple years ago when they lost to the Celtics?
Yeah, for sure. I actually have this coming in a piece sometime this week where I'm previewing the entire Western Conference. And
way to promo your work, Mike. I love it. I love it. And while we're on the subject, Mike, before you get into what it's about, where can they find that when it comes out?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be on dallasnews.com. It'll likely be tomorrow. We just finished our run, actually, of releasing the top 45 Mavericks to ever play. So that was a fun project to work on. But this current Mavericks team, as it is constructed, it's going to be, like you mentioned, a wild card going into the season because health is going to be the main variable. We already know Kyrie Irving is expected to miss multiple months recovering from that ACL tear from last season. You got the situation with Anthony Davis where he had to get a procedure to repair detached retina back in July. So from reports, he just returned to the practice floor this week, probably about 9 days out of training. Well, 8 days now out of training camp in Vancouver. So a lot of this season is going to depend on health. And they brought in guys like D'Angelo Russell. Obviously, they got pretty lucky getting the #1 pick with Cooper Flagg. So you get a Swiss Army knife right there. But in order for this team to get back to the finals, they got to be completely healthy. Like, everybody has to play a part. And right now, like, I'll give you a sneak peek of where I have the Mavericks. I think they're going to be playoff bound, but I think they're going to be fringe right there, 6-7. Which means they could get that 6th seed and actually play a first round series without having to go through the play-in tournament like they did last year, coming up short to the Grizzlies. Or I could see them struggling to fight again if they don't manage to stay whole, if they don't find any sense of continuity between this new group. If Kyrie's return is delayed, he comes back later than expected, a little bit closer to the playoffs, whereas some people believe that he can come back as early as maybe January, right before the All-Star break. It's really up in the air right now when he'll return. So this team can be anywhere from the top to the bottom, which is a pretty vague way to look at it, but it's so unpredictable.
It is. And one of the guys that you mentioned it was Cooper Flagg, who, unlike a lot of #1 picks, and we've talked about this before, he joins a team where he doesn't have to be the day one face of the franchise. He doesn't have to put this team on his back, even though obviously from a talent standpoint, from a skill standpoint, it's a matter of when, not if, that day is going to come. But that day is not today. So that being said, there are other guys in this draft who are going to teams that aren't nearly as polished and put together as the one he will, and thus those guys are more likely than not going to put up better numbers than him. So from your perspective, what does a good season for Cooper Flagg look like, even if the numbers may not suggest him being that guy?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. Like you mentioned, we're used to teams who are probably lower on the totem pole in terms of the standings. They getting the number one pick, and that guy is pretty much expected to be the face of the franchise right away. They're relying on him to score. They're relying on him to get his teammates involved. Just a lot of high production and high usage. That's not going to be the case for Cooper Flagg. He's going to be surrounded by a group full of veterans like Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, two bigs, and Gafford and Lively. Eventually, when Kyrie comes back, he'll have that support. But early on, I expect them to throw him into the fire early and often. It's going to be interesting to see how training camp plays out, because I think that'll determine whether he gets to start or not over PJ Washington or not, since they pretty much play the same position. Nico Harrison has come out and said that he can see those two guys sharing the floor at the same time. So we'll see what that looks like, but somebody's going to have to come off the bench. And if you're familiar with Jason Kidd, like he gives rookies or young players an opportunity to start, but they got to earn it. Like Derek Lively went to the bench as soon as Daniel Gafford was acquired in 2024 before they made that playoff run. But ultimately, Derek Lively had to earn that starting spot back. So it's going to be interesting to see if Cooper can come out outright and kind of earn that spot. But I think a successful season for him, basically, he's playing his game. We all know he can rebound really well. He can defend really well. He's able to facilitate the offense. I think J. Kidd wants to try him at point guard a little bit like he did with Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think there will be nights where he struggles, of course, because you're a rookie. That's naturally going to happen. You're still getting adjusted to the speed of the game, the pace, the physicality. I know is a big thing for a lot of guys when they come into the league, but I think as long as he plays his role, whatever they need him to do on a nightly basis, if he does that, then they'll be in a good position.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he does from a defensive standpoint, because just watching him at Duke, I wouldn't say he's a lockdown defender, but he's not a walking easy pass either. He seems to be a guy that you could see him being a solid defender, and if he's able to do the things that we know has the potential to do, which is be a good rebounder, be a facilitator, be a guy that makes really high basketball decisions out there that helps the team win, I think he's going to have a great rookie season. But to your point, though, I'm curious to see whether he starts or not either, because PJ's a good player. PJ ain't no punk. PJ ain't no. We're not talking about some mediocre sort of kind of player. PJ can ball, but
and he got paid.
Exactly. So now I'm curious how all that stuff is going to come together, because you've got this young buck who's the number one overall pick, who's fighting this vet, who's a good vet, who always plays with a little bit of an edge. But to your point, Mike, and I'm glad you brought up the money, we've seen plenty of guys, once they get that check, they check out. I don't think PJ's built like that, but if it were to come to that, if it appeared as though that was happening, nobody would be surprised. I'm just curious about I think you touched on this. I want to get your thoughts a little bit more on this. The competitiveness of training camp. When you, even with no Kyrie in the mix, and you got Anthony Davis, who's just kind of, gradually getting back there after off-season, surgery and stuff, it feels as though there's going to be a little bit more competition in camp this year than maybe there was last year. And I'm just curious, how do you think that is going to manifest itself and play out as the Mavericks are pull all this together and, again, get back to the finals where they were a couple years ago?
Yeah, it's funny. They were in the same position this time last year. From the point guard standpoint and with the bigs. Like last year, there was a point guard competition. Who's going to be the backup behind Kyrie? You had guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, Dante Exum, Jaden Hardy. And then with the starting bigs conversation, it was always Lively or Gafford. And I think the Lively or Gafford thing is going to play out again, because you can start both. They're adequate starters, more than capable starters on any team in this league. So Jason Kidd always has that decision to make. But as far as the point guards go, Obviously, we assume it's going to be D'Angelo Russell filling in for Kyrie Irving. But then you got guys like Dante Exum, who they re-signed to a one-year deal. You got Jaden Hardy. You got Brandon Williams. And they also just re-signed Dennis Smith Jr. to a training camp deal. He has familiarity with this franchise. He was drafted here in 2017. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But this is the type of thing that Jason Kidd loves. He loves to instigate competition, see who rises to who becomes the cream of the crop, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's definitely going to get that opportunity with this cast of characters that he's bringing in here. Before we go any further, just a reminder, this is the Big Three NBA podcast, part of the CLNS Media Network, which is where you will find the Big Three NBA podcast, past and present, as well as other great Celtics content. And also just a reminder that we are joined today by Michael Curtis of the Dallas Morning News. We're talking about the Dallas Mavericks, their off-season, heading into training camp, which will be here before you know it. And Mike, you just really can't have a conversation about the Dallas Mavericks of the present or the future without talking about that Dallas Maverick of the past, not so distant past. And we're talking about Luka Doncic, who is gone but never too far away from the minds of NBA folks and Dallas Maverick fans alike. And now there's actually more to talk about Luka because there's less Luka to talk about. And we're talking specifically about the weight loss that we've seen. Just watching him now, it's just, he really does look like a different man out there. And, you know, this is something that obviously has been talked about directly and indirectly for years. What would a slimmed down, better conditioned Luka look like? And I think now that we see what it looks like from a physical standpoint, I'm just curious, you know, as you kind of make your way around town in Dallas and you're hearing from fans alike, how are they reacting to this new look Luka, who is looking the way they've kind of wanted him to look for a while?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It seemed like Luka's gone on this quote unquote revenge tour ever since the Men's Health article came out and he was showing off his new body, transformed body. He's definitely slimmer. Something they actually wanted him to do over the past, 6.5 seasons since he's been in the league. And it's funny when you bring up Luka. It's like he's always there, no matter if he's here or not. And there are billboards outside of American Airlines Center. Luka's been featured in this video game called Overwatch. And there are billboards outside, not on the building, but really close to the arena. And it has his face and it says Cowboys never die. So it's almost like even when I'm not here, I'm always going to be here. But in terms of like his body transformation, I'm curious to see how that looks mid-season. And I think that's the biggest concern with, I don't know, I guess the lifestyle change that he did during the offseason. Is that going to translate to the regular season? Is that going to be something that's consistent? Because if you ask not Cowboys, if you ask Mavericks fans, it's something that kind of happens every year. Of course, it looks a little bit different this year, just given everything that has come with the trade and the criticism of his conditioning. But is that something that's going to be consistent going forward? And I think it'll help him. I think he'll be lighter on his feet. I think he'll be able to put more emphasis and effort on the defensive end, which has also been a criticism of him in the past. But if you look at the way he was playing in Eurobasket this summer, that could be a pretty good indicator of how he can use that newfound, weight loss to translate to the NBA season, because he was out there playing like the MVP candidate we know he's capable of being.
Yeah, he was definitely, I mean, you definitely saw more with less with him out there, for sure. Before we go any further, just wanted to make a quick shout out to our good friends at Prize Picks, which is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash with millions of members. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Again, it is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. You can, again, mix and match player projections from different sports like basketball, women's basketball, sports such as esports, soccer, you name it, they've got you covered. They also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. How do you get in? It's really, really simple. You just download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And also, we want to talk another good friend of the program, and that's Game Time. The Game Time app gives you the advantage back to fans. Simply put, it is the place to go when you are trying to find good prices to see your favorite college teams and pro teams and other events play out. As a Syracuse graduate, as a Syracuse football fan, as a Fran Brown fan, I'm super excited about what we did at Clemson. Was already planning to see them play this year. Just looked into getting me some tickets over Thanksgiving because I'm gonna go back to Syracuse to see my mama, and we're gonna check out their football game against Boston College that weekend. Looking at some of the ticket prices, we can get in the building for like $9. But with my family, we ain't doing that. We not sitting 300 rows. We are going to be much closer. And the great part for me is I can do that and not have to spend a ton of money in the process. And that's really the great thing about the Game Time app, is that it allows you to not only see your seats before you make the purchase, but once you even get to the point where you find where you want to sit, you see the prices and you're like, my goodness, this is what I'm talking about. Great prices, great seats, great opportunities to enjoy the sports events that you care about and love. And they take a lot of the guesswork out of buying really good college football tickets. And the way you get involved is really simple. You download the Game Time app, you create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, you just create an account, redeem code CLNS for $20 off, swipe, tap, ticket go, download the Game Time app today. All right, people, we are back, and we're talking with Michael Curtis of the Dallas Morning News, talking about the Dallas Mavericks, talking about that man, that myth who never goes away, Luka Doncic. But the one thing I wanted to also get into, and you talked a little bit about him before we went to a break, about just some of the things that he's able to do now and how he looks out there. What part of his game do you think, Mike, has benefited the most from that weight loss?
Yeah, it's funny when you look at how he performed in Eurobasket, and the main thing that I saw was how fluid his shot looks. We all know how much Luka relies on his legs in order to get that lift, get that arc on his jump shot, and it looked so fluid. Like every time he made a three-pointer, you could see his lift was there. You could see the ball was going directly through the net. He loved those splashes. Every time he gets one of those, he pretty much celebrates or cracks a smile, cracks a grin, especially when he was here in Dallas. But I think his shot is going to benefit him the most, because when Luka's three-pointer is on, it opens up, unlocks so much more of his game. He's able to get his teammates involved because guys are doubling him, tripling him. He's able to get to the basket. I think that'll benefit him as well. He's never been a guy that pretty much like absorbs contact at the rim, but he's still able to fake guys into the air, get him to bite, and then finish off the glass. He loves finishing off the glass in the mid-range. So I think his shot is going to benefit him the most. But if he puts the effort in on defense, and like Kendrick Perkins says, move those puppies, I think that'll be a good way to make an impact as well.
Yeah, and the big thing that I when I'm just watching him play now that jumps out to me is his stamina. I mean, he looks like he has the ability to play at the level that he wants to for longer stretches. And to me, that's when you make that transition from being, a really exceptional player to a guy no one can stop. When you think about LeBron James, you think about Michael Jordan, you think about, the all-time greats, the one thing that they all had in common was that when they took over a game and dominated, they didn't just dominate stretches, they dominated long stretches. And that's the one thing that Luka, we've seen him dominate, but it seems to be almost every time he has one of those stretches, a period of time where he's trying to hit that B button and ain't nothing happen. He's clearly not as dominant for certain stretches. And a lot of it comes down to his conditioning, which doesn't seem to be as much of a problem now as it's been in the past. And again, it's not like Luka has been a bad player. He's literally been one of the top 10, top 15 players. But certainly with him in better condition and more stamina, he all of a sudden becomes that top 2, top 3 player that I think talent-wise he has the potential to be. But his body, his conditioning, and all those things hasn't quite caught up to that yet. but it appears it may very well have done that this summer. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see how things play out with Luka now with the Los Angeles Lakers. And another player that we're all keeping kind of eyes on is Jonathan Kuminga in Golden State. Multiple offers on the table. He's considering taking the $8 million qualifying offer, which would make him an unrestricted free agent next year. It seems that there's a bit of an impasse to getting a multi-year deal done. He wants to have a player option at the very end of it. Golden State is like, nah, we want a team option. And so both sides seem to be kind of at this point of someone's got to blink. And here's the thing. I think they will eventually get something done, and he'll be there for at least another year. But what I'm curious from your perspective, Mike, because you see Golden State more than I do, and certainly, the Western Conference in general, you have a better feel for. But what does him returning to Golden State mean to the pecking order in the West? And keep in mind that if he does, in fact, resign with him, that probably means Al Horford is going to sign shortly after that. Anthony Melton is probably going to be after that. And then Gary Payton II is probably going to be part of the mix as well. How do you think his return and the domino effect of his return for others coming aboard, how does that change Golden State in the whole, matrix of the Western Conference, do you think?
Yeah, it's so interesting right now because as of right now, the Warriors are the only team in the league that hasn't signed any free agents.
Which is crazy.
That sounds nuts given the fact that they're expected to be one of those teams that are going to be competing in the Western Conference. And you got to get better from year to year in order to stand out. But having a guy like Kuminga on the roster, he's one of the best two-way wings, young wings in our league right now. And I think when you have a guy like him, when he's locked in, he can be a force. Obviously, as it looks now, if he returns to this roster, he's coming off the bench because they got guys like Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler in front of him. But if he's engaged in a second unit, he could start on most teams. Like I mentioned with Derek Lively and Gafford earlier, this is a guy who can start. He has the potential. He has the upside. He just has to be a little bit more consistent. And I feel like there are so many things going on off the court that are impacting his ability on the court. It may be time that he may have thought that by now that this would be his opportunity to kind of take over a team, but you still got Steph Curry playing at a top 7, top 5 level when he's healthy. You got a guy like Draymond Green who's still a dominant defensive player. So this is still the elder statesman's team. And that 2 timeline thing that they tried to do, it didn't really pan out. And he's one of the final guys from that. Because you look at a guy like James Wiseman hasn't been able to stay healthy throughout his career. You got Jordan Poole, who looked like he could have been the guard of the future for the Warriors, but he got shipped off to Washington, and now he's with the Pelicans. So he's the last of that 3-player trio that the Warriors had in mind when they thought they were going to transition to this younger group. But when healthy, I think, and engaged, I think he can really give this team the depth they need, especially off the bench.
Absolutely. And again, I don't think anyone will be surprised if he's back with them. I don't think anyone will be surprised if they figure out a way to get rid of him or trade him. But I do think ultimately that he's going to play one more season in Golden State unless they basically relent and give him that player option that he's looking for. Because I just don't think he's going to – I think knowing that there are going to be more teams with more money next summer, this is probably the best time if you're going to gamble on yourself and take a pretty sizable, hit financially this year. This is probably the year to do that, particularly when you're a young guy like he is. And you're certainly, I think it's fair to say his best years in the NBA are still ahead of him, I think, at this point. And as we close out of here, I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts on a few players that have Celtics ties, actually Western Conference ties, and most likely ties with teams that you're going to be dealing with on a regular basis. And there seems to be this nice little plethora of former Celtics who are doing their thing for the most part out west. And like the one guy that I'm thinking of who is going to be in the East used to be a Dallas Maverick. So this all comes full circle. And I'm talking about Marcus Smart in LA with the Lakers, Drew Holiday with the Portland Trailblazers, former Maverick Kristaps Porzingis now with the Atlanta Hawks. Luke Cornett's going to be down that way in San Antonio with the Spurs. And then Al Horford most likely to be a Golden State Warrior. Now, of those former Celtics, I'm curious, Mike, who do you think will have the biggest impact on winning? And this is a question I'm asking a lot of NBA insiders throughout the league to get their take on this, because I feel as all of those guys, I feel all those guys can make an impact, but I'm just curious, who do you think will have the biggest impact on their new team this season?
Yeah, right now, off the top of my head, I'm looking at two guys, and mainly because I think they're going to be projected to start in their new respective teams. You look at a guy like Jrue Holiday, who's in Portland. We know Portland just re-signed Damian Lillard, so he's obviously going to be their point guard going forward, but he's dealing with the Achilles injury. So Jrue Holiday is definitely going to be in line to start next season. It'll be a developmental year for the Warriors, if you will, gap year. But not the Warriors, but the Trailblazers. But I think Kristaps, if he can stay healthy, he's going to start alongside Trae Young, who's still one of the most dynamic point guards in this league, always hovering around 9, 10 assists. And I think he's going to benefit from playing with a guy like Trae Young, who can excel in the pick and roll, who can get his teammates involved and get his own shot. But he's going to be that second option. You put him next to a front line that also has Dyson Daniels. It's going to be interesting there in Atlanta. I think Kristaps just has to stay healthy, and that's been his biggest deterrent, especially when he was in Boston. He gave him enough to give him enough juice in that NBA Finals run to contribute against the Mavericks. But if he can stay healthy, I think he'll make the biggest impact on his new team. I do like Luke Cornett behind Victor Wembanyama too.
Yeah, and Luke's going to get probably some early burn, just depending on how quickly Victor is able to get back and all that kind of stuff. The part of me, I want to go with Porzingis, but my concerns are just like yours with the health. The guy that I think might have the biggest impact is Marcus Smart, because one, he's going to play. Two, he plays a role that no one on his team can play well, which is defense. And so if they're going to need him to be the Marcus Smart that we've seen of old, but I'm sort of putting him almost in the same box as Porzingis as far as, if healthy, he can be really good. And when he was in Boston, he played through a lot of injuries, played through a lot of pain. Since leaving Boston, he's had significantly more health-related setbacks than those of us who covered him are used to seeing. So he remains a bit of a mystery wild card as to what he can do in terms of impact. But if you're talking about the safe money pick, I think you got to go with Jrue Holiday for all the reasons you pointed out. He's a good player, first and foremost. He's going to get an opportunity to play. And I think the measuring stick for success is a much lower bar with Portland than it is with any of these other teams. I mean, if Portland gets to the play-in game and Jrue Holiday has a solid season, that's a success. That's a major success for them to get to that point. And if they find a way to finish in the top 6, like either the 5th or 6th team in the West, he's probably in line for certainly some type of post-season accolades, whether it's all NBA defensive acknowledgments or something like that. So Jrue Holiday is probably the safe pick to go with among the former Celtics as far as what they're going to do for their new teams. Before we get out of here, for those of you listening to the show, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, leave and like and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to CLNS Media and Celtics All Access YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Celtics content. And one more thing, please, please, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you can know the instant a new video like this one drops. For my good friend Michael Curtis of the Dallas Morning News, I'm Sherrod Blakely, and this is the Big 3 NBA Podcast. We out.